Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Overcoming Common Ailments with Acupressure and Herbs. My name is Janet Thompson, and I'm an acupressurist and herbalist here in Oakland, California. And I specialize in pediatrics and women's health, although I do treat just a little bit of everything, especially when it comes to families. And I was motivated to give this presentation now because we're entering into flu season. We're concerned about a resurgence of COVID, and I think it's really important that people have the ability to treat concerns by themselves at home with at-home remedies so that they can stay out of the medical system if possible, and leave the medical care to people who are really having more extreme conditions. So today we'll be covering a number of different common ailments, and the remedies that I'm going to offer are things that can be used for both children and adults. I would say if the child is less than 2 or 3 years old, you'd want to stick to the acupressure rather than the herbal remedies, just out of safety, because the dose is really different for young children. So you'd want to be in touch with your pediatrician about that. So that said, I'm going to move along here into the welcome slide. So as I mentioned, we'll be covering both acupressure and herbal medicine, and I'll let you know a little bit more about what those are and how they work. And then we will cover ways to address allergies, cough, sore throat, and an upset stomach. So I wanted to share a little bit about acupressure. Some people have heard of acupressure or acupuncture, and they're not really clear what the difference is between the two. They're both based on the same system of healing. So several thousand years ago in China, over time, a whole system developed of points on specific parts of the body that create physical or emotional changes in the same or different parts of the body. So for example, there's a common point on the hand here that has a lot of impact on how the face is. You can use it for toothache or eye ache or other sorts of aches and pains or problems, imbalances in the face. So in acupuncture school, we learn 360, 400 acupuncture points all over the body. And those points, so acupuncture is when you use a needle to stimulate those points. And again, it's not a hypodermic needle. It's not like what you get a flu shot from. It's a very thin hair width, sometimes slightly larger than hair width needle that gets tapped into the skin at those one of those many acupuncture points. Acupressure is a way of stimulating those same points, but without using needles. So this is something that you can do on yourself at any time. You can do it on a loved one, and it's safe. It's not as invasive as acupuncture, although I wouldn't actually call acupuncture very invasive for the most part. But it's something you can easily do at home using just a finger or a small blunt object to create change. So we use acupressure for a whole variety of things, for aches and pains, for mental and emotional issues. And as you'll see today, they can be used for things like cough and allergies and upset stomach and the like. So again, it's similar to acupuncture, except without the needles, and it's safe to use on kids of all ages. In my clinic, I use acupressure. We have this little man was about a little over one, maybe 14 months when I saw him in the clinic, but it's safe to use acupressure even 1, 2 weeks old, especially if there's colic or something else going on. So that's a little bit about acupressure. And I wanted to tell you about herbal medicine. So there may be some preconceived notions about herbal medicine. I know some people think, well, common herbs, what can they really do? And common herbs are used in pretty much every culture around the world. I have my training in Chinese herbs, and there are also a lot of Western herbs that can be used. So today we're going to largely talk about Western herbs because I want to make sure that what we're doing here is easy for you. I want you to be able to use them at home anytime you want, rather than having to go to a clinician to receive herbal medicine. So herbal medicine can be shown to have a whole bunch of different healing effects. It is Scientifically, different types of herbs have been scientifically shown to have an array of healing effects, such as anti-nausea, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, pro-circulatory. There are some that help you evacuate. There are some that dissolve mucus, and there are many that affect the nervous system. So they might be anti-anxiety or anti-stress herbs. And these are much cheaper and easier to use than pharmaceutical medications. One of the reasons I like them is because they're just so accessible. And you can use them, you can get them at the store. Many of them you'll already have in your house in terms of the more common Western herbs. And so it's really easy for you to use them when the need strikes. So we'll apply both the acupressure and the herbal medicine to a number of conditions, and we're going to start with allergies. So I want to talk first about herbal remedies for allergies. I know here in the Bay Area, seasonal allergies are pretty common, coming with red eyes, itchy eyes, stuffed up sinuses, runny sinuses. So allergies, typically a lot of people take an over-the-counter allergy medication, which is fine. Some of them can be overly drying, and some people don't like that they can come with slightly sedative or sleepy inducing qualities. So I wanted to provide some alternatives to allergy medication. When your allergies are coming with mucus, oftentimes you'll get either stuffed up or really runny nose, sometimes mucus down the back of the throat, postnasal drip. This is a time when cinnamon bark tea can be really helpful. So you can take cinnamon stick, which is the bark of the cinnamon, put 2 or 3 cinnamon sticks in a pot of water, boil for 10 to 15 minutes, and then strain it out. You might want to add some honey for flavor, but that cinnamon bark tea will help to dissolve the mucus in the sinuses, in the respiratory system. And you can take it, I would say, if you're in an acute phase with really a lot of mucus, you could take it 2 to 4 times a day. If you're needing it sort of throughout allergy season, I would say maybe 2 cups a day to help that sinus mucus to dissolve. The second remedy I wanted to talk about is elderflower tea. And I want to make sure the distinction is clear between elderflower and elderberry. So they're the same plant, but for this purpose, you want to use the flower before it then fruits and turns into the berry. The berry is commonly used for immune protection. You can buy elderberry syrup, that kind of thing, and that's not what we're talking about here. We want to use the flowers. So the flowers you can purchase online. One company I love, no financial connection or otherwise, but Mountain Rose Herbs in Oregon has been selling organic herbs online for, well, not online the whole time, but they've been selling organic herbs for 30 plus years, I believe, maybe even 35 now. And their quality is great, their prices are reasonable, and they have elderflower as well as pretty much anything else that I'll be talking about today, including herbs and spices, if you need help sourcing them. So the elderflower tea is wonderful because it's cooling, which means that you can, when you have the red itchy eyes, you can help cool that inflammation that's happening in the sinuses, and it will also help with draining the sinus. So I think elderflower tea is really wonderful. And the way you create it is you take a teaspoonful of elderflowers and put it in boiling water, let it steep for 7 to 10 minutes, and then drain it out. It's really easy. And then you have your cup of elderflower tea. Again, if you want to add honey or something to make it a little more palatable, you can certainly do that. So again, if your allergies are more the type with the red itchy eyes, maybe the itchy nose and throat, sort of that inflammatory feeling, elderflower is probably a better bet for you than the cinnamon bark tea. And lastly, just because it's so classic, I wanted to mention a Chinese herbal formula that I give a lot during allergy season, which is called Song-Artsa-San. And it's got 4 main herbs. And again, it's a Chinese herbal formula, but 2 of the constituents you might be familiar with. One is mint, and the other is magnolia flower. And then there are 2 other herbs in the formula, and it's great for opening up the sinuses. So I wanted to mention that in case some of the other remedies aren't working well enough. I'm not sure that this formula is sold in stores. I know some really common Chinese herbs are sold in, Whole Foods or Berkeley Bowl, some of the local sort of health food grocery stores. I'm not sure this one is. You might have to get it directly either online or from your herbalist. So those are some herbal remedies for allergies. And then I wanted to chat about acupressure. So I find that actually looking at a real face rather than a diagram of a face is easier to find the points. So I have a handful of awkward pictures in here. I wanted to first cover the points that are on the nose. So for people who have really stuffed sinuses in through the nose and under the eyes, sort of the ridge here, the first point to go to would be this point. You can see the silver stickers in the graphic. Um, this point is located, there's basically a groove along the bulbous part of the nose that runs up and then sort of disappears. You'll know when you take a close look in the mirror, you'll see exactly where it is. So you find that groove that's running around the bulbous part of the nose, and where it ends, that's your point. And you'll press it again on both sides. And typically I tell people to use really sort of dull pressure, like a fingertip or the blunt end of a pen or a spoon, or maybe the blunt end of a rock or a crystal or something like that. For this point, you actually might want to use fingertips a little bit, and fingertips or fingernails, as long as they're not too sharp. Um, when you press on that area, sometimes it'll cause a little, how to describe, you'll maybe wince a little bit because it's powerful, and so it may cause your eyes to water a little bit, but it will start to open up this area. So I would say press for a couple minutes at a time. I know that's a little while. The acupuncture, this is one of those rare points where I feel like the acupuncture needle is actually a bit more effective, but you do want to have some home remedies. So use a fingertip or fingernail to get in there at this point to open up that sinus and help it drain out. The next set of points I wanted to cover are the green stars on the top of the head in the graphic. And these are a good set of points for a combination when you have both watery, itchy eyes and clogged sinuses. These points are great. So I'll give you specific directions for how to get to these points. And then I'll also give you sort of a dummy version if you forget exactly how to get there that will still help. So the first one is in the center line of the head. So if you go, from your nose all the way up the center of your head, and just inside the hairline, maybe about a finger's width inside the hairline. If you press, you should find it feels a little bit tender, and that is one of those points. And again, you can use just a finger and press down, and that should help. You'll certainly feel a tender spot. That will help create some opening in the face to allow relaxation of the eyes and opening of the sinuses. And the second point, it may be a little hard to tell from that picture there, but the second point is located in line with the pupils. So if you're looking straight ahead, basically you want your fingers in line with where you're looking straight ahead, and then draw a line straight up to the top of the head. And this one is just barely inside the hairline. And again, when you press down, you'll feel a little bit of a tender spot. So you might want to press, if you can, use 3 fingers and press all of these spots at the same time, and they'll create an opening to help allow the eyes to calm down and the sinuses to calm down. So that's the technical way to get to these points. I would say if you're having allergies and you remember there's some points in the top of the head, take all of your fingers just inside the hairline and just press around. You're bound to hit some of them. You can maybe remember that one is right directly in the center, and then just press around. Actually, there are a couple other points that are in this ridge, basically just inside the hairline, that will do the trick. And again, you can use pressure for several minutes at a time, and then as many times a day as you feel like you need it to help open things up. So that's the acupressure piece for allergies. And I want to head on to cough. So what I want to say first about cough is people come up with a cough for many different reasons. So one common way is that there's a cold or some sort of bug going around and it creates a cough. And that's the kind of cough we're working with here. If you have a cough that's due to long-term stress, that's due to uh, maybe an overall weakness in the body. You can get sort of a weak, dry cough. There are a number of different reasons that you may have a chronic cough, in which case you might want to see your acupuncturist or an herbalist. These tools may not help so much if the cause is not sort of a cold oncoming. So that said, there are a number of different remedies here for cough in general, and then both a wet mucousy cough or a dry cough. So if you feel a cold coming on and you're getting a cough, this would be, that feeling where you're a little bit run down. Maybe you have a little bit of an itchy, scratchy, or sore throat. You feel like you need to sleep a little bit extra. That's the cold coming on. You would want to use a tea made of cinnamon bark and ginger root. So again, you take a couple sticks of cinnamon, and you take a fresh ginger root and slice, I don't know, four or five slices, wide slices of the ginger root, and boil them together for 10 or 15 minutes. And then strain out the cinnamon and the ginger. And you'll probably want to add honey because that's going to be a pretty warm and spicy drink. Unless you're hardcore like I am, you'll probably want to add a little bit of sweetener in there to make it palatable. And when you're having the cough, I would say in the first couple days, if you need to have this tea 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day, that's fine. Certainly wouldn't do more than 4 or 5 cups a day, generally, because it's going to be, cinnamon and ginger are both heating for the system. So if you do feel like you have a fever, this is probably not the best solution, but it should help a cough, especially if you're a little bit tending towards chills. Maybe you have a scratchy throat rather than a sore throat. Again, with a sore throat, this might be a little bit of a too warming therapy. The next option I wanted to tell you about is a classic Chinese remedy for dry cough, dry lungs. That's the kind of thing actually these days with some of the fire smoke you might be feeling when it's just really scratchy and the cough isn't bringing anything up and it feels just quite dry. So we, in Chinese medicine, we use pear to moisten the lungs, moisten the throat. So just as a simple remedy, eating pear, drinking pear juice, those are great ways to moisten. But for this remedy, we're combining a couple different things. So you'll want to actually bake the pear. So you'll take a pear, cut it in half, scoop out the seeds, and then in that little bowl where the seeds had been, you can put, and if you can't access the seeds, this is also good. So, but if you can buy the Chuanbeimu seeds online, I know you can get them on Amazon. You can put the seeds in the middle of that pear, drizzle honey on top, and then bake. You also might want to put some water in the base of the pan where you're baking the pears so that it's steaming. And you can bake the pear for 20, 30 minutes until it's nice and soft. And then you'll eat the whole thing. Make sure the seeds are soft before you eat them. If they're not soft, you can take them out. Again, if you want to do it without the seeds, these seeds are very moistening for the lung, very supportive for the lung overall. So that's why it's nice to do the pear and the seeds and honey, which is also moistening. If you just want to do baked pear with honey, that's totally fine. And that's a good remedy for dry cough and dry lungs. The next two are for cough that's wet, mucus and phlegm coming up. So one easy way is to take hot water, sort of boiling, just off boiling water, and add in a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper and some honey and stir it all together and drink that to ease some of the mucus. The black pepper is great for breaking up mucus. It's also great for digestion. So if you're the kind of person who feels phlegmy also inside the digestive system, this is a really nice remedy. Because the black pepper will tend to settle out, you'll want to mix it up continuously. So you'll drink it with a spoon so that you can keep stirring and get the honey and the black pepper to get up into the liquid as you're drinking it. Another way to dissolve excess mucus that's getting involved with your cough is actually to make an herbal honey, and it's easier than it sounds, that you can then mix in with hot water to make a drink. So you'll take maybe 1/4 half a teaspoon each of powdered cardamom, powdered cinnamon, and powdered clove. And these you can either buy the powdered varieties in the store, or if you have the whole herbs, you can use a mortar and pestle and basically break them down or use a seed grinder to get them pretty powdered. And then mix them in with honey. So you take maybe a spoonful of honey and mix the herbs in so it becomes like a sort of a paste, but a thick herbal honey. And then you can take a tablespoon of that honey, mix it in with hot water, and drink it. Should taste delicious, especially if you're a fan of these herbs, which I certainly am, of their flavor. And that should help dissolve the mucus in the respiratory system. So this again is, this remedy is less about calming the cough, but it does soothe the mucus that may be coming up with the cough. The last recipe is for a homemade steam. So I know some people are familiar with using something like Vicks in a diffuser or in a pot of hot water to steam. This is a home remedy. Sage is really antimicrobial, and so it's a wonderful thing to take in as a steam to get it really, the steam will penetrate into the respiratory system and help solve the coughing problem. So what you'll do for this one is use dried sage leaves. Usually you can get them in a grocery. You can also order them online if you want more in bulk. And you'll take 4 tablespoons of dried sage and a quart of water. You'll put the dried sage in the quart of water, bring it to a boil, and then simmer for about an hour. And then once the hour is done, you will carefully, since it'll be hot, strain out the sage. And then you have this pot with a quart of quite warm sage water. That's your sage tea. And then what you'll do is position the pot, and you'll be careful about this because you don't want to get any burns. Position the pot below you and then lean your head over and cover with a towel. So the steam that's rising up from the sage will penetrate through the nose. You'll try to breathe through the nose. You can also breathe through the mouth if you feel like you need that in, more in your throat as well. And sit under there for 10 to 15 minutes if you can, to really let that sage penetrate and help soothe the cough and the respiratory system. And I would say if you're doing this for children, you'll just definitely need to supervise the whole time to make sure that the child isn't getting too much heat or getting too close to the just off boiling water. So those are herbs for cough. And next I want to cover acupressure for cough. There are not as many standard acupressure points for cough, but there is one stop coughing point that I wanted to share. And that is located in the inner elbow. I know it's a little bit hard to see on this diagram, so I will show you and have you look at your elbow. If you can roll up your sleeve, and if you bend your arm towards yourself, you will find there's a ropey section in the center of your arm. That's one of the tendons. And what you'll want to do, let's see if I can show you this way. You find that ropey section, and then you move out. So the outer edge, the thumb edge of your forearm. And then you'll move out just a little bit, as you can see with the green star in this diagram. You'll move out just a little bit, maybe a finger's width. If you have a chronic cough, in this area, you should find like a hard, painful knot. So you'll know if you get there, if you've been coughing a bunch, and you get into this section of the elbow, again, find the ropey tendon, move out towards the thumb a little bit, and then move a little bit down the arm, just about a finger's width, and press in there. Usually it's easiest just to grab it with your thumb, and you'll press and massage. And you should find that the area, again, is sort of hard and painful. And this point you can do on both elbows. I would say press for a few minutes at a time. You could massage a little bit, and that should help ease the cough. And this is a good remedy, especially for children who can't get their cough under control. You'll be able to find that point on them and massage it pretty thoroughly. So that's the main point I would use for cough. There is another point that I'll show you when we get to sore throat, that if it's a really sort of fiery cough, like it's loud, it feels spasmodic, there's another point that I'll show you that can also be used for cough. So we'll get into that in the next section. So, sore throat. I wanted to cover a handful of herbs for sore throat. I'm actually going to start with the bit on the sage tea since I just described how to make the sage tea for the steam for coughing. If you have a sore throat, you can actually use that same sage tea and add a quarter teaspoon of salt per cup of it. So, in that direction, I gave you 4 tablespoons of the dried sage boiled in a quart of water for an hour. And so what you'll do is take a cupful out at a time, mix with a quarter teaspoon of salt, and use that as a gargle. And again, because the sage is antimicrobial, it will help resolve the issue in the throat. So that's one remedy, herbal remedy for sore throat. The first one on the list here, which is also the one in the picture, is a seed used in Chinese medicine called pangdahai. And you can also order it online. I don't think Mountain Rose Herbs has this, but I know Amazon has a bunch of sellers that distribute it. And this is it's a really fun seed because what you do is you'll pour a cup of boiling water and drop a seed in, and kind of like jasmine pearl tea, you'll watch the seed slowly unfurl, and it's really beautiful as it opens up. And what happens is it creates it's a little bit mucilaginous, so it's a little slimy, a little slippery, which is that's the aspect that helps to soothe the sore throat. So again, you'll take just one of these seeds, put it in boiling water, wait for it to fully open up, 3 to 5 minutes or so until it fully opens up. And then you can strain that bit of the seed out, or you can just sip around it and take a cup of that tea as often as you need it. And this is a great remedy for people who are also losing their voice. So it's commonly used for teachers and singers, public speakers, people who are overly using the voice and the throat and it's getting dry. It doesn't have to be sore. It can also be for just dry throat. And this herb really helps. And then lastly, I would say, frankly, I love throat coat tea, which is a traditional medicinals brand of tea. And it, again, I believe that one uses marshmallow root, which is also another slippery mucilaginous herb to help calm the throat. So if you're not in a space of cooking and creating your own herbs for your sore throat remedy, just pop over to the store and use throat coat tea. I think it's a really well done herbal remedy. And then lastly, if your throat is sore, I would say avoid spicy foods, caffeine, and alcohol to the extent possible. I know some of us may be caffeine addicts or otherwise, but best to back off for a couple of days if you can, or at least limit, because that will just further aggravate the throat. So you'll want to stay away. So I wanted to share some acupressure for the sore throat, and I have 2 pictures here, one of a hand and the bottom one is of a foot. For the hand points, I did want to show you one first that works for both sore throat and can work for that fiery cough I was talking about, where you have a loud spasmodic cough, often the more painful kind of cough. And that is the point on the diagram here that's on the thumb. So the way that you find this point, so you have your actual thumb joint. I'm going to bring my thumb up to the camera here. You have your actual thumb joint, and then below the outer piece of the thumb, there's another bone that connects the thumb into the hand. And you can feel that bone. It's about 1.5 inches long. And so what you'll do is you will find the halfway point in this lower section. So often it's pretty fleshy in here, and you'll go about halfway down. And if you're on the bone, that's too far. You want to be in the fleshy part, basically right off the bone. So if you can find that hard bone, go halfway in between and then roll until you roll right off the bone into the fleshy section. This point is fabulous for the throat and basically heat conditions in this part. So again, that barking cough, that raging sore throat, acupressure in here is great. It can be pretty tender. Physical therapists will also use this area of the thumb to affect change in the back of the shoulders. So if you're pressing it now and you have tight shoulders, you might actually, it may not be referring to the sore throat or the cough. It may be because your shoulders are really tight. So this can be a tender point. But for sore throat, you would want to press on it for a couple minutes at a time, as many times a day as you need. So this is one great point for sore throat. A second point is in the space between the thumb and the index finger. And there's sort of this big triangle shaped area. If you close your thumb and forefinger together and find the highest part of that area, that's where this point is. It's, approximately halfway between this lower thumb bone and where the index finger connects to the rest of the hand. And you'll want to press this area. So this area is known as the master point of the head and face. And so what that means is if you have a sore throat, if you have a toothache, if you have eye problems, this whole area can be governed by this one point. It's also, I should mention, a good point for stress. So if you are feeling tense, it's a good point to, again, use a lot of pressure on. And I should say that if you're pregnant, this is a point that you should stay away from. It can be a little bit too stimulating for the fetus. So stay away from it in pregnancy, but for kids, for adults, it's a great point to use. The last point I want to show you for sore throat is on the foot. And what you're seeing in this video, or sorry, in this graphic on the slide, is the inside of the foot. So you can see your ankle bone on the outside and on the inside. And this point is just directly below the center of the ankle bone. That's that circular hard part that's sticking out, just directly below in the soft fleshy area. And this is a master point for the throat. So if you generally have throat concerns, whether it's sore, whether it's dry, this point on the inside of the foot, right below the center of the ankle bone in the fleshy part, is a good spot for the throat. And again, same as with the other points, you can use a finger, you can use a small blunt tool to press on it and to create some change. So those are the acupressure points for sore throat. The last section I wanted to cover today is for upset stomach. And I'm a person with who tends to digestive problems, so I love this topic because upset stomach happens to me all the time for various reasons. What I also love is that there are very specific remedies in here for different types, different causes of nausea, stomach upset, that sort of thing. So we'll go through each of these, and then afterwards I'll teach you the standard acupressure point for nausea and stomach upset. So for me, what I would recommend, since there are 5 different remedies here, is, if you're stocking your kitchen, if these are things that you don't already have, I would say, first of all, figure out what flavors you like. Those tend to work well. And then if there are specific issues that you tend to have, say you tend to eat food that upsets your stomach, or you tend to anxiety and stress that impact your stomach, then those are going to be the kind of remedies that you're more likely to want to stock in the kitchen so you have them ready. So the first remedy is for, The first remedy is for nausea if you also have stomach cramping and some gas in the stomach, maybe some burping, and that's basil tea. So you would steep some basil. You can use dried basil. If you're using dried, I would say use, I don't know, probably close to a tablespoon of dried basil, steeped in hot water for 10 minutes. If you're using fresh basil, you can use a little less. I would use, for a cup, maybe, basil leaves vary in size, maybe 3 of the large leaves chopped up in a cup, for, again, steeped in hot boiling water for about 10 minutes. Strain it out, and then you'll probably want to add some honey. Basil tea on its own is maybe not the most palatable, but it's a good effective remedy for nausea when you also have cramping and some gas in the stomach. One thing that's interesting is bay leaf tea. So you may know, if you tend to cook a lot, that bay leaf is included in a lot of soups and stews. It's included in, for example, in Indian cooking, bay leaf is used a lot. And the reason it's used is that it helps with digestibility. So, which you may not have known, may have thought it was for flavor, but it also serves a medical purpose. So if you tend to have stomach upset after foods, maybe you have a quote unquote sensitive stomach, or you just have a random night where you went to a restaurant and you came home and it's like, oh, what did I eat? This is a good time for bay leaf tea. So you'll take a handful of bay leaves, again, similar thing with the basil. You'll steep in hot or boiling water for about 10 minutes. strain it out. You can see if you want to add some sweetener or not. That should help calm the tummy. My go-to is the next remedy, which is black pepper. And this remedy is of Indian origin, and it works for me. It works fantastically for any sort of stomach concern, whether it's post-eating or whether it seems to be a random stomach upset. So what you'll do is you'll take a lemon, you'll juice the entire lemon and put it in a large glass, probably about a quarter teaspoon of black pepper, quarter teaspoon, maybe eighth of a teaspoon of salt, a touch of sugar if you'd like for taste, and then seltzer to fill the glass. And you can use plain water instead of seltzer. The nice thing about seltzer is it aerates the black pepper, so the black pepper doesn't settle to the bottom of the glass as much. If you're using regular water, just get a spoon in there and keep mixing so that you're actually ingesting the black pepper. But this combination is really fantastic, and it's easy to make. It tastes like a nice lemonade with a little bit of pepper in it. So that's a lovely remedy. Next up, if you are the type of person to get stomach aches due to anxiety, stress, nerves, what we call it, this is a good remedy for you because it combines sort of nervous system herbs with digestive herbs. So chamomile flowers, again, if you can't find them in a local health food store, you can order them online. Again, Mountain Rose Herbs is my go-to. So what you'll do is take maybe a teaspoon, sort of a rounded teaspoon of chamomile flowers, and then a teaspoon of fennel seeds, which are easy to get in the store, and steep them for about 10 minutes, strain it out. Chamomile is super well known for its nervous system calming. And fennel is a beautiful herb because it helps with digestion and also is a nervous system regulator. So if you get those two together, it's a lovely remedy. So try that one for stomach upset due to anxiety and stress. And then the last remedy, I think most of us sort of commonly know actually, is that ginger is helpful for nausea, nausea in terms of morning sickness, seasickness, motion sickness. Those are all good times, or just generally, if you tend to be a person who's a fan of ginger and you find it works well for you, keep a ginger root in the fridge and again, just slice up maybe 4 or 5 wedges of ginger, boil in water. So if you're using the fresh root, you want to just put it in a pot with a cup and a half of water, boil it for 10 minutes, maybe 15 if you want to make it strong, and then filter out the ginger, and the remaining tea, if you want to add a little honey, you certainly can do. So that's a great all-purpose remedy for stomach upset. So those are the herbal pieces. And then here we go. So the primary acupuncture point for nausea, or acupressure point, is on the forearm, and I'll show you exactly how to get there. And this point has been studied for a number of things. It's actually for if you have, so let me back up. This point is used for nausea, but it especially regulates the chest and the stomach area. So if you have a combination of stress and stomach impacts, anxiety and stomach impacts, this is a good point for you because it's both calming and it opens the chest and settles the nausea. It has also been used actually really commonly these days for nausea due to chemotherapy. So some of the larger cancer centers are actually using acupuncture and this point in particular for their patients who are struggling with nausea due to chemotherapy. So this point, as you can actually see it pretty well on this picture. If you look at your forearm, you'll find that there are these 2 tendons that run next to each other. You can see the 2 lines in that picture on the graph, sorry, on the slide. And so this point is located in between these 2 tendons. And if you have trouble finding them, often I recommend making a fist and moving your wrist around, and you should be able to see these 2 tendons pop out. So the location of this point is 3 fingers width below the wrist. So where, if you're moving the fist around, you will take your 3 fingers from your other hand, put it right in the crook of that of the wrist, and then at the bottom of that 3rd finger, which is about here, in between the two tendons, is your point for nausea. So again, 3 fingers. 3 fingers is about 2 inches for most people. So if it's easier to eyeball it, instead of using 3 fingers against the wrist, you can do that too. So again, you take the forearm, you locate the 2 tendons, you take 3 fingers, and then at the bottom of the 3rd finger, in between the 2 tendons, is your point. This point can be a little bit tender, and I usually find holding the wrist and using the thumb to get into that area is an easy way to go. Of course, if you'd rather use an object like the back end of a pen, back end of a spoon, something like that to get in there, you can do that as well. And I would recommend, if you're struggling with nausea, pressing this area maybe 3 minutes on one side and then finding it on the other forearm, and 3 minutes on the other side should be a way to help relax everything, open it up, and relieve the nausea. So that is what I have prepared for you guys. And I'd love to take any questions. If Scott and Anjali, if you guys have any questions at all, either in the chat or live, I'm happy to take them. Scott, I think you're muted, or I'm not hearing you. Maybe try again.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
For what I saw, thank you very much. I had a problem. I couldn't find a camera.
Oh, I'm glad you made it.
So am I. Very informative. Thank you very much for sharing.
Oh, good. You're welcome. And I will be posting the recording too, so I can get you the link.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Great. Yeah, I was wondering about the recording and the slides. Will the slides be available as well?
Let me see if I can make them available separate from the recording. I mean, obviously they'll be in the recording, and you can flip through, but let me see if I can get the slides over as well.
Yeah, and I know I had a couple of questions as we're going along, but now I can't remember what they were.
Oh, do you remember which topic they were on? I'm happy to flip back the slides.
Toward the beginning, they were on the allergies.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. No, can you go forward one more? Those points. No. Maybe it was cough. Sorry, I should have written it down.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, can I?
A lot of info in here. Yes?
Yeah. Well, can I ping you later if I think of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what's the best way to do that? On the meetup group? Or?
On the meetup group is great. I do check those.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This is helpful.
You're so welcome. Nice to see both of you, and have a lovely weekend. I will stop the recording and share the recording with you when I can.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Take care.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.